Imagine waking up at 1 a.m. Your right eye feels like it's exploding from the inside. Your body screams to move, forcing you to pace the halls, rocking and pressing a hand against your face in pure agony. Most people hear bad headache and immediately think of a migraine, but migraines make you seek a dark, quiet room where you can lie perfectly still. With this condition, stillness is biologically impossible. The extreme intensity of the pain forces a frantic, agitated physical response. Neurologists call it cephalea and racemos, or cluster headache. But in medical literature, it carries a much darker moniker, the suicide headache. Not because patients want to die, but because in the middle of a severe attack, the brain desperately searches for any physical escape from the pain. Look at this population scale. This condition is incredibly rare, affecting roughly 1 in 1,000 people. To put that into perspective, it is statistically less common than multiple sclerosis. Because of that rarity, many general practitioners misdiagnose it as a severe migraine for years. In places like Latin America, the average patient suffers for 6 to 8 years before a doctor correctly identifies what is actually attacking them. Living nearly a decade without a clinical diagnosis takes a massive toll. You go through these brutal pain cycles in total isolation, slowly becoming convinced that you must be exaggerating your own suffering because no one can give you a name for it. This PET scan shows exactly where the disease begins. Notice the bright areas of high activity in both hemispheres. We are looking directly at the central hypothalamus. It acts as your body's master biological clock, dictating sleep patterns, hormone cycles, and seasonal responses. Researchers at Sweden's Karolinska Institute discovered a variation in a specific clock gene called CRY1 in these patients. This genetic mutation explains why the attacks are highly seasonal, often triggering automatically during the dramatic daylight shifts of spring and autumn. Before the seasonal cluster even begins, the body sends clear warning signs. The nervous system drops its sensory threshold to near zero, thrusting the patient into an extreme state of high alert, hearing sounds occurring blocks away. This is a vintage barometer used to measure atmospheric pressure. Look closely at how the needle aligns with the rain and stormy markers. People in an active cluster phase essentially become living barometers. Hypersensitized pressure sensors in their sinuses and ears allow them to physically feel a storm approaching hours before the first drop of rain falls. When a patient smells rain coming, they are relaying a physical truth. The pain follows a strict genetic clock, a predictable failure of internal sensors reacting to the environment. When the hypothalamus gets overwhelmed, it sends a distress signal directly to the trigeminal nerve. This massive cranial nerve has 3 branches. Once activated, it releases inflammatory substances that specifically swell the blood vessels along the ocular branch, physically crushing the structures behind the eye. The sheer scale of the resulting pain defies normal description. Medical literature places the intensity of a cluster attack anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times higher than a severe migraine. When the central nervous system gets hit with extreme stimulus, it cannot process the signal. Patients frequently experience perceptual dissociation. The mind forcibly splits its attention. To survive a pain level that shouldn't be biologically possible, the brain generates its own internal narrative. You might hear your family talking to you in the room, but you are also trapped in a vivid, hallucinatory state inside your head, living with one foot in an entirely different reality. This intense state often forces the mind to personify the agony. By treating the pain as a separate entity, something to be bargained with or confronted, the brain utilizes its social processing centers to manage a stimulus that would otherwise be biologically unbearable. The cruelest part of an attack is the external reality. There is no fever. There are no broken bones. On the outside, the person looks perfectly intact, leaving family members to watch helplessly as someone they love burns from the inside out. But the things families instinctively do to help actually work. Look at this neural pathway. When someone applies a hot compress to the eye, those heat receptors send signals that actively compete with and block the pain signals from reaching the brain. The mere presence of a loved one also changes the brain's chemistry. The company of someone you care about triggers the release of oxytocin, a hormone that physically modulates how the central nervous system processes pain. Sitting in the dark with a patient offers a measurable clinical benefit. This act of being there engages real neurological pathways, providing a form of medical support that is as valid as it is empathetic. For the episodic form of this condition, the pain eventually stops. You enter a period of remission that can last for months or even years. You almost forget what the monster looks like, enjoying the false peace until the season changes and the inevitable cycle begins all over again. If you are walking the halls at 2 in the morning, digital lifelines exist. Patient-founded organizations like Clusterbusters and 24/7 Reddit communities are filled with thousands of people who are awake, pacing right alongside you. If you are listening to this in the Caribbean, in Latin America, or anywhere else, and you recognize this story, know this: your symptoms are documented. Your pain has a medical name. You have never been exaggerating. The physical agony of a cluster headache remains invisible to the outside world, but understanding the complex science behind the biology strips away the stigma, pulling the patient out of the darkness of isolation and into the light of a community that finally sees them.